If you wanted to close a $2.8 billion budget hole, you could, I wouldn't recommend it, close every community college in the state, close the UW, WSU, Western, Eastern, Central, and the Evergreen State College. If you close them all, you would close a hole of about $2.8 billion. That gives you some sense of the size of the challenge. Alternatively, you could close our Department of Commerce, our Department of Revenue. You could close every state prison. You could end all programs by our state Department of Health. And you get about 2/3 of the way to solving the state's budget challenge. So it gives you some sense of the size of the challenge. The challenge that we face this year is not a one-year problem. It is likely not even a 2- or 3-year problem. This is a multiple-year problem. And so as we approach solving this problem, from our point of view, you need to do a few things. One, you gotta make some difficult cuts, because the state cannot keep doing what it's been doing. 2, you gotta look for thoughtful reforms. 3, you gotta get this economy moving. Because again, we don't have a one-year budget problem. And the only way you're going to be able to fund some of these needed services is by addressing those sorts of concerns. One of the biggest solutions that we can bring to not just this year's budget challenge, but our ongoing budget challenges, is we've got to get this economy moving again. My focus, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone in this room, my focus since I've been in Olympia has been on growing jobs, not on growing taxes. We've got to get this economy moving. It solves 2 of our problems. 1, it actually brings more dollars into the state coffers, and 2, it actually suppresses some of the demand for state services. So how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, we have to start with our small businesses. Small businesses are the engine of our economic growth. 2/3 of our recovery will come from small businesses. And on top of that, there's been a lot of conversation in recent years about Boeing and Microsoft. But here in our neck of the woods, we don't have Boeing and Microsoft. We have small businesses. So from my point of view, we've got to block and tackle for those folks. Here's a few of the things that we're looking at doing. 1, in the Senate budget that gets announced later this week, you will see a proposal that I have sponsored to provide some tax relief for our small businesses, to help them grow out of this mess, so that as they bring on staff, they see some tax relief. And for startups, we actually have seen an uptick in demand for new business licenses. The problem is we have a business and occupations tax that is really quite punitive to small businesses before they start making any money. They can be bringing in revenue, not profitable, and paying a business and occupation tax. That's stupid. And so a credit like that would provide some help to them. One of the other key elements is infrastructure. I may be the only person in the room who gets really excited talking about sewers and wastewater treatment and things like that. Okay, maybe not the only one. That's good. I'm glad you're here. But we've seen this here in Gig Harbor. We've seen this on the Key Peninsula as well. In the last 5 years, we've had 2 building moratoria in this community. 1, because our road infrastructure was at capacity, and 2, because our wastewater treatment facility was at capacity. How many of you remember when Franciscan announced that they wanted to build a new hospital, and the first answer from the city was, "Love to have you, but our roads can't handle it." Do you remember that? Yeah. I remember that. That is a problem, because we were able to solve that with some help from the state, but if we hadn't, that was 450 new jobs in this community. That's why infrastructure matters. One of the bills that I've sponsored, Senate Bill 6241, provides a tool to the private sector. It's a tool that they have in a variety of other states to try to spur private development forward. We've got to get this economy out of reverse or out of park and into drive. So providing some of those tools to the private sector, I think, can be really valuable. One of the other things that I'll mention, how many of you have heard of the Main Street program? Any of you? Okay, a handful of you. In Gig Harbor, this is a very important program because it's really designed to try to preserve downtown Gig Harbor and try to help some of our downtown retailers. We've got a bill that would try to sustain that program. One of the other key elements of it is, as our small businesses make contributions to the Main Street program, they get a tax credit back. And if that program goes out the window, that's bad news for our local small businesses. Finally, one of the ways we're going to grow this economy, both in the short term and long term, is making sure that people have the skills that they need to compete. In our budget, you're going to see a lot of cuts. But one of the few items in our budget where actually I think you will see some increased investment is in worker retraining. And let me tell you why. If the state does nothing, you are going to see about 8,000 Washingtonians sitting on waiting lists at our community colleges to get retrained. These are folks who have lost their job and want to get a new skill and get into a job. If we don't serve them, not only are they going to have a hard time getting into a job, they're going to cost the state more money because they will be on unemployment. At a time where we're seeing a lot of our small businesses grappling with rising unemployment insurance costs, getting folks retrained into a job makes a whole lot of sense. We've also got a couple bills focused, one of which I'm the prime sponsor of, focused on trying to provide additional skill opportunities in some growth areas for our state, in aerospace and in the healthcare arena. We've got to get this economy going again, and that's really my main reason for being Olympia. You know, I think you've heard us talk a lot about how we would approach this budget, and one of the key things to remember is state government is not unique in the challenges it faces this year. Every family and every business is facing some of the same questions right now. I see it in my day job. I work for the Economic Development Board in Pierce County. In that capacity, I meet with about 200 small businesses a year. None of them are really doing well right now. And so it is a mistake to think the state government is somehow, well, first it's a mistake to assume that the state government is immune from it, but it's also a mistake to assume that state government is unique in those challenges. And I think that's part of the perspective that Larry and I bring to this. One of the things that each of our families is doing right now is prioritizing. And I want to give you a sense of where my priorities are. First, I believe we have not only a constitutional obligation, but also an economic imperative to invest in education. It's the smartest investment our state makes. The dollars that we invest in making sure our kids get a good education are dollars we save down the road in social services and in incarceration. That's a smart investment for our state, and it's one that we are constitutionally obligated to make. Two, I believe we have a moral obligation to provide services to our most vulnerable citizens. Yesterday, I spent part of my day meeting with families of children with disabilities. I think we have an obligation to have their back, to make sure that we're providing the needed services to vulnerable people in our state. Three, I say this as a dad, you have to preserve public safety. If you look at how some of those 48 states that are grappling with budget problems have made some of the decisions they've made, I think they've made really stupid decisions that I think really jeopardize public safety, and I don't think our state should go there. And finally, I think we have an obligation to invest the taxpayer dollars that the state has as efficiently and effectively as possible. And also, it means sometimes you're investing in prevention. A dollar that is spent in one area that can save $10 down the road, or that can leverage federal or private dollars, those are the types of smart investments that we should be considering making.